Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020 Team of the Week 8. So we have results from the Overwatch League once more as it recommenced for Week 8, and that means that we get to do a Team of the Week again. We haven't done a Team of the Week for 3 weeks now, so this week was quite interesting because we got to see teams that we haven't seen for a long while, or we got to see teams that we haven't seen at all this season, so it'd be interesting to see who stepped in to fill the roles that basically have been filled by most of the Atlantic Division right now, because most of the Team of the Weeks we've done have been Atlantic Division based. So this was a very intriguing Team of the Week, and there's one team that have really taken this Team of the Week by storm, and I'm sure you can probably guess which one it is. But let's get into this then, and we start off in the supports as ever with Toby of the Seoul Dynasty. I was really impressed with Toby's performance this week. Seoul Dynasty ran out 3-0 winners in both their games against the Los Angeles teams, and those Los Angeles teams beat the Shock. So Seoul were definitely the best performers this weekend, and I was really impressed with Toby and other people's performance with on the Seoul Dynasty as well, and you'll be seeing that coming up a little bit later on in the video. But Toby was ever present, he was really reliable, he was very consistent with his play, and he was the backbone of the support line for the Seoul Dynasty, alongside Badosin. So I was really impressed with Toby's performance this weekend, and I hope he continues on into the future. He is going to be a very crucial player for this Seoul Dynasty side. So my second support slot was a bit of a tougher one this week, because I was coming into the last few games of the weekend, and I was like, well, no one's really stood out to me. No one stood out on things like the Zen and things like that, so I was kind of debating about who to put in this slot. But then we had the Valiant versus the Shock, and Lastro's performance, especially on the Zenyatta, blew me away for the Valiant against the Shock. He was extremely effective on that Zen, and I see his name in the kill feed so many times during that match. He really did stand out for me with that Valiant side in that match, and when I saw him play, I'm like, well, this has answered my question. This was my question. I was asking myself, who is going to fill this role in Team of the Week? And Lastro just answered all those questions. I didn't think I'd be putting Lastro in Team of the Week at the start of the season because, honestly, I had my doubts about the player. But he has really proved to me that this week he deserves to be in the Overwatch League, and he performed really well for the Valiant. So Lastro goes in as the second support. So the support to Toby and Lastro, the question is, who are the tanks? Now the tanks are heavily dominated by Korea. Now, in the tanks, there are some people that could have slotted in here, so there's some honourable mentions. Like with Lastro, you could have had Badosin, but I thought Lastro was slightly better than Badosin this time around. So my main tank, and this is debatable this week, because both the tanks I put in are technically main tank players. So, my first one is Gesture. Gesture, he looks so reliable for the Seoul Dynasty, I think is the best word to use. There was no one this week across all the matches, in my opinion, in the main tank role that really, set up some massive plays, had a massive games. Smurf for the Shock was, there, but not really. Dreamer was an honourable mention for this. He had a good display against the Shock. Gujue was fairly good for the Spark. Rio was fairly good for the Charge. Ameng was good for the Hunters. I'll give him that. But Ameng, he's good bull. Don't get me wrong, he's a really good bull. But other stuff, I still have my questions about Ameng. Shanghai Dragon stand 1, I can't put stand 1 in there at the moment. But Gesture had a really consistent week. That's a trait of Gesture's anyway. Gesture is normally good. But I saw sides of Gesture I haven't seen before. Yes, he was mostly on the Orisa, but I got to see the Gesture ball. And I was surprised when I saw Gesture on the Wrecking Ball, because I thought, that's not really Gesture's strength. But he came out and was very good on that ball. I have to give that to Gesture. And he really did open up points for his team very well. I think Gesture performed very consistently and very well this week, and he gets the main tank slot. That is technically the main tank slot, but I've also got in the off-tank role his partner, Marvel. Marvel impressed me no end this week because I was surprised when Soul Dynasty ran out with Gesture and Marvel. I was questioning where Michelle was, and I was wondering, well, what is Soul going to do here? Because this is a really weird lineup. But when you revert back to the London Spitfire days at the end of last season, Gesture used to play the Sigma and Fury used to play the Orisa. This time, Soul Dynasty are going to have Gesture on the Orisa. Now, Gesture is a really good Orisa, and I would like to see him on the Orisa. And they're going to have Marvel on the Sigma the most of the time. But we did also get to see Marvel on other heroes, such as the Zarya, the Diva. And actually, he's really accomplished at those heroes. So, I think Marvel has really demonstrated this week how flexible he is in the tank role. He's not just a main tank, he is a main and off tank. That gives Soul Dynasty so much diversity. It does hang a question on Michelle, what will happen with Michelle, because the way that Soul have played this week, I honestly see them running Gesture and Marvel all the time. But this means that they've got so much flexibility, they could swap Marvel and Gesture around if they wanted and have Gesture on the Sigma at times. But I was very impressed with Marvel's varied hero pool this week, considering we hadn't really seen him on the off-tank before. So Marvel's going to get the off-tank role. An honourable mention to McGravy though, I was really impressed with McGravy with the Valiant against the Shock. I think he is really able to show his skill at the Valiant now he's away from like the Florida Mayhem where he was before. The only reason I didn't give it to McGravy is because the Soul Dynasty did dominate the game against Valiant. So I want to give it to the more consistent player, and this was Marvel this week. But McGravy is an honourable mention. Hawk did well for the Atlanta Reign, but again, we didn't get to see all that much of him. Space did okay. Void, don't know about that one. And obviously, people like Elsa and Krong of the Guangzhou Charge. I was actually really impressed with Krong this week, but I want to give it to the most consistent and best off-tank, and it has to go to Marvel this week. Krong, though, I really think he's going to be a good signing in the long term for Guangzhou Charge. I've seen some glimpses of good stuff from him. But, moving on, and this is the bit we always love. It's the DPS, right? There are a few options here. We've seen a lot of varied comps this week, which means there are people that stood out on different things. Happy had a good time on the Widow McCree, but then got shut down in other instances. We saw Baby Bay have a really good display for the Atlanta Reign. We also saw Edison have a really good display for the Atlanta Reign this week. Birdwing was really consistent for the Gladiators. I was happy with his performance. I was iffy about Mirror though. Mirror had some points where he was getting caught out pretty heavily, especially on the Doomfist. Jarrow was fairly okay for the Gladiators, but the first spot I'm going to give, it's mainly the hit scan DPS I'm going to give here, it's got to be KSP. KSP was phenomenal for the Valiant this week. I was really impressed with KSP. KSF was really good as well, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't made it onto this team of the week this time. But KSP, he was really good. Some of the plays he made against the Shock, it was just phenomenal. Yes, Valiant got swept aside by the Dynasty. Fitz was good for the Dynasty, don't get me wrong, but I haven't seen him really pop off like KSP has this week. KSP, I've seen him get 4 or 5Ks in fights, so KSP has been fantastic this week. And if the DPS line of the Valiant, KSF and KSP, can keep popping off like they are, the Valiant, they could be in for a surprisingly good season actually. The stonks at the Valiant are definitely going up. Unless obviously Custer decides to start backing them again and predicting them to win matches, then in that case the Valiant might start to struggle slightly. But I am really impressed with the DPS of the Valiant. Even at the start of the season I thought it was lacking, but they have proved me wrong, and KSP had a phenomenal week, so he gets my hit scan place. But there's obviously the other people, right? The projectiles, the utility heroes that can make a big difference in a match. Prophet was an example of this. Prophet was really consistent for Soul Dynasty this week. He played a variety of heroes, did really well, but that's Prophet. Prophet didn't pop off, in my opinion, Profit was consistently good, but that is Profit. He's always been like that. Even when London Spitfire was struggling, that's Profit. So it's not going to Profit this week. It's going to Jinmu of the Chengdu Hunters. Jinmu. Now, we always know that Jinmu can be very good, right? But he, honestly, at times, put the Hunters on his back in some of these situations. He played mostly the Pharah or the Genji, and it's just so phenomenal to see Genji popping off again. And we saw a lot of dive from the Chinese teams, Ball Diva dive, even with the Tracer Genji, right? And Jinmu looked really, really good. And then he pops out on the Pharah, and he's just causing so many problems for his opponents that he is just opening up opportunity after opportunity after opportunity for the Chengdu Hunters to take down these teams. I think he is one of the main reasons why Shanghai struggled so much against Chengdu, because they just didn't know how to handle Jinmu. Jinmu is in the back line on the Pharah or the Genji causing your supports problems. You've got Leave on the other side of things causing you problems, and then you've got a Ming coming in on things like the Bull. It was so chaotic, and Jinmu was just a master of chaos this week for Chengdu Hunters, and he popped off. So he gets that last DPS slot, and I think he is the first player from a Chinese team this year. So congratulations to Jinmu for that. So that is my team of the week. Toby, Lastro, Gesture, Marvel, KSP, and Jinmu. Obviously, there are some other people that could have made it in. I did obviously give out some honourable mentions. If you've got your own team of the week, please leave it in the comments below. As always, we will have a nice debate about that. But next week, we will have more action. We don't know what fixtures we're going to see yet, but we do know that finally, we've got someone decent to pick the hero pools. It just took Zoe's cat. That's all. We don't need analysts or casters. We just need a cat to break the hero pools. I believe it is Brigitte, Hammond, May, and McCree who are banned for next week. So week 9 is going to be very interesting. I'm probably going to see more fixtures as well, with London and Vancouver able to play, maybe Dallas as well. But we will look at the hero pools in the meta preview, because it's been a really interesting week this week, considering we haven't had really major parts of the meta banned. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.